I'm stuck inside, right? And so I'm laughing at this, and I got to hop the fence, right? So they would never, the two gates, the gate and the fence post, the original post that would come together, they would just chain it, right? So there was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 inches. So I just jump up there, and then, of course, I was skinny enough at the time, I could just slide between them, right? And go to the other side. Well, there was always a piece of barbed wire, and I don't know what the hell it was, but I would cut my jeans, right, on this piece of barbed wire. Well, all these years later, I go back, and would you believe I get locked? No kidding. Get locked in there again, and by gosh, if I tried to go back through that gate, stepped on the lock, and would you believe I must have hit the same barbed wire because I tore my jeans again after all those years, right? And I was just laughing, going, I don't know what it is with the Lincoln site. I just have bad luck. Now, one thing you're going to see on the surface that's number one is a lot of the vent shafts, like the LOX vent shaft to the launchers, they're open, but they're all full of water. Literally, I mean, they're like 2 feet from the center, from the surface is the water. So immediately that'll let you know that, yeah, in the domes in both the Powerhouse and in launch operations, would there be a pretty good air pocket in there? Yeah, there would be. But at least on the other side of that is you can pretty well tell how much water. And if you look to one side of the site, I want to say it's to the east, but don't quote me on that. You can see down there, I mean, beautiful, beautiful homes you're looking down on, and there's a lake. Yeah. It's just a gorgeous lake.
But it's safe to say that all the utility tunnels are probably flooded.
I would imagine. I mean, there's really no way. I mean, yeah, you could go in and scuba. But then, of course, you know, that's one of the more contaminated sites. They found a lot of trichloroethylene. And that's one of the things that the Corps there at the, it's California, isn't it? I think that's the Sacramento district. And, you know, they're doing a lot of air raiding. They're pumping a lot of air through all of that, trying to get the TCE to evaporate.
What I'll ask you is when these, I guess the Corps went out and did these geological surveys of these sites to make sure that they were appropriate to build these sites. If they're flooding now, they probably had to fight flooding back then.
I'm not too sure that lake was there. See, that's the other side of this. I think that, obviously those houses weren't. When that site went in, you can bet there was nothing around it. I doubt seriously the government used to. Now, on the F sites, they would take from the center of the silo and spin it out 1 mile and do a 360 around it and call that, you don't enter that zone. There can be nothing within that 1 mile over 2 feet tall. Nothing.
Damn.
So I'm not too sure. You would have to go back, I would imagine, go off of Siloworld, download and read the construction histories. Would probably give you a greater idea, because that would have been on the Corps side. See, they would have gone through when that property was expropriated. The deed restrictions would have been right then as the government took the properties and then the Air Force took over for that. Those would have been in there. The reason I say this to you is on the deactivation side of it with the Corps for first generation on the F site, you physically can read that.
Right.
You can physically see that that was part of that particular site. So one thing that's really interesting about Lincoln, I mean, it's like no other site. The Lincoln site was in the movie with Rock Hudson, The Gathering of Eagles. That tree that is in the movie that you literally can go online and see that clip on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, when the B-52s are flying over at the same time, the launchers in the Titan 1s are up on their launch platforms, locked up on the surface, ready to go. I mean, it was the famous scene, right? You'll notice a big giant, I think it was a live oak, huge, enormous. When the Air Force, or when the Army did, or the contractors did, and the Corps oversaw it, did all that excavation work there, obviously for the Titan I there, they left that tree. They never. So, I mean, it's still there. You can see it in the pictures. I mean, which is kind of neat because you can really make it out. If you go to Siloworld also and look at some of the operational photographs, you will see the photographs of the film crew up on, they built some steel platforms that they're up on filming. Because those were the scenes that Rock Hudson flies in on the helicopter and you see the coffin door to the access portal opening up, waiting for him. And then the next thing you see him walk down, the next thing you do is you see him walk into the Powerhouse.
That's awesome.
I mean, that is the one movie that if you really wanted to see, you know, what's interesting, if you go back to the very beginning of those things, just like with the Fs and the Es and the Ds, you know, something occurred. I don't know if it was our side playing propaganda with the former Soviets to show them that, yes, we had these sites. I mean, you can look up the old Perry Masons and find, you know, one of the famous ones was the case of the misguided missile.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
And it was shot right there at Vandenberg. You know, I mean, it's just, you could see a lot. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., there was a famous scene where you see him looking through on level 2, looking through the door into the missile enclosure area, and there's the Atlas, there's the warhead. Because from level 2, where we are right now, there was that door and there was a piece of glass in there. You could look through and literally see the RV.
Damn.
Which had to be kind of spooky, you know, thinking that underneath that warhead, what do you have? I mean, it's, you know, granted, if you weren't doing a test, right, and that site was fully operational and on alert, you had nearly, you know, you had a W-38. I mean, that's, you know, nearly 4 megaton.
That's awesome.
That had to make you think twice. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, God, I hope this thing stays together.
That's right.
You know, while I'm on this ship. But it just, but I mean, you know, back on Beale, I mean, so many of the first generations, you hear the way I jump around, but it's the way it's all intertwined. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
It's like little bits and pieces, but that was the prominence that, you know, the Lincoln site had, and here's one for the books. I mean, this is one that directly is absolutely true, but nobody really knows this. The only alert facility at a former SAC base with B-52s now, not just B-47s, okay, but the B-52s, like there was at Beale, okay? Theirs is the only Air Force alert facility that has a swimming pool.
Yeah, I heard
And it was built by the studio for letting them do what they did at the Beale sites. The studio put that swimming pool in for the alert guys, for the B-52s.
For recreation.
Absolutely. There's the only one like it. I mean, and you have to stop and think. I mean, you know, that really had to be a pretty good luxury. Could you imagine I'm diving off the diving board and hear all the claxons going off, right? Everybody's trying to gather up their equipment. You're trying to change out of your swim trunks, right, and get your uniform back on as you run into the station wagon, driving to, you know, your B-52 that's on alert.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, that had to be wild.
Well, it's like the movie. I can't recall it right now, but it was made back then, and it wasn't The Day After Tomorrow, but it was.
Well, they had a couple. They had Twilight's Last Gleaming. You know, that was with Burt Lancaster. And,
where they had
a lot of those were models.
How about the ones where they had like the Minutemen's coming, launching out of the?
Oh yeah.